Hello, and welcome to the More Cheese, Less Whiskers.com podcast. My name is Dean Jackson, and today our guest is David Igono. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but there are a lot of podcasts in the world right now. It seems like podcasts are becoming the hip, cool thing. And David's got a great concept for a podcast specializing in college golf. And just like any podcast, you've got to have an understanding of why your podcast exists. What's the purpose of your podcast? And I've always found that a podcast, is not just about generating leads, but it's more about converting leads. A podcast is more of I look at it as a Profit Activator 3 vehicle for educating and motivating people. So you still need to be able to do some lead generation. You're not going to be able to just put up your podcast and hope that that is the answer. It's a very noisy market right now. But the good news is that you can be very specialized. And when you do, that creates lots of opportunities for you. And once you get clear on who you want to be a hero to, this is something that David and I spend a lot of our conversation figuring out, that you really get an opportunity to be a market maker. And I think you're really going to enjoy this episode, especially if you've been considering or you have a podcast that you're trying to figure out its place in the world. So enjoy. David.
Dean Jackson, how are you, sir?
I am so good. How do I pronounce your last name?
Igono. You just turn that I into an E, and then you just let it flow.
You see, there you go. Igono. All right. David Igono. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
We're recording live right now. We got the whole hour to hatch some evil schemes. So what are we going to work on?
So, and I'm actually on vacation in Maine, so I don't have my laptop with all of my information on it. But I launched a podcast last August, a year ago. Okay. And it's focused on college golf. This is the weirdest small little niche that I've just fallen in love with. And essentially,
okay,
I'm torn. I've talked to, I have over 100 episodes. I've talked to 30-something, 40-something different coaches and a host of other people around the game. And I don't know if I should focus on the coaches, because one of the things I keep hearing is, hey, we need help recruiting. I love talking about the actual aspects of coaching on the podcast. But then there's where I think there's a bigger, dare I say, market, and it's for the junior golfers and their parents, because there's a whole sub industry, or I don't know if that's the right term. There's a whole industry of getting placed somewhere on scholarship between Division III, Division II, Division I, and then you have NAIA and the junior college level. So all in all, you have about, I think the last numbers were about 1,200, 1,300 schools. So that's where I've sort of just been like, man, I don't know where to go with this.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, let's talk about the end result here. Like, who is this going to be a dream come true for? When you look at it, how are you going to create value with this? And that value can be to advertisers. The value could be to end users. I mean, you got to realize and understand who your ideal, what's going to be the best possible outcome from this. How many listeners do you get right now to your podcast?
It's funny because it had a slow start last fall, but from January through about May, I was getting almost 800 downloads a month. On the podcast. So it's growing, and I set up a courtesy Twitter feed just so that all these coaches could find it, and I'm getting requests to be on the show. So it's definitely ticking upward, but it's nothing, huge by any means.
Okay. And so who are you, how many episodes do you do? Do you do a monthly episode, do you mean, or?
I've tried to do about one a week. Okay. I don't know how familiar you are with the college golf schedule, but the fall is a little. No, but just the regular college golf schedule in the fall, it's sort of like, and coaches are going to hate me saying this, but it's a little bit looser, so they'll have like 4 or 5 tournaments from, let's just say, September through latest Thanksgiving, and then they're done. But then in the spring semester, depending on what level they're on, they go full bore. Well, depending on the level and where they are in the country, they go full bore from, let's just say, February 1st through June. So I've tried to time it up to do one a week. And
what are you talking about? Who's the audience?
So the audience at first was coaches. It was always coaches, because I started a small little podcast years ago where I interviewed different coaches, and somehow I just fell into the college golf niche. But what I've heard from coaches, obviously not on the call, during the interview, but they said, "Hey, I've given the links to our interviews to recruits and their parents so that they can see what we're about without me, because there's so many recruiting legislation rules that you can't talk to them during certain periods if they're or unless they're at certain ages." So it's sort of spawned into something where I selfishly just want to talk to coaches. I love talking to coaches. I was like, wait a minute, there might be a huger or a bigger opportunity to just focus on the people who are trying to get into college golf, because every year, guaranteed, there's a new wave coming in across all levels.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're on the right track. I have a friend who does something similar with hockey players, and it's that's kind of a similar thing, right? Parents are spending a lot of money with their kids to play elite hockey, and the hope is that they'll either make it to the NHL or they will get a college scholarship. Is always kind of plan B. The worst case scenario, they'll get a hockey scholarship. So I think that when you look at that, the dream for junior golfers is to get a college scholarship. That would be that'd be a real viable desire that people have. So gathering that audience is really going to be valuable to the coaches. Like you're really in a position where you can be a market maker, where you've got an opportunity to gather the prospects, gather the golfers, and expose them to the coaches. That it's kind of a win-win. So it's typically coaches that you have on the show. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And what kind of things? What do they talk about? What kind of things are they timeless things, or are you talking commentary on this tournament? Like, is it which way is it going there?
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I stay away from the timeless for the most part. I mean, I'll do some updates. Honestly, it kind of depends on the prestige of the coach and the program, for the most part. But where I've gotten the most positive feedback anecdotally and, just literal downloads is where we talk about the recruiting process. I even did a small, I think it was a 3-part series with a coach in Texas on how he's applied Moneyball techniques to recruiting players. And it was just, like I said, I didn't see that part of it at all. I just selfishly like to talk to coaches, but that is the one thing where, to a man, they always tell me, David, we always have to recruit. We always have to recruit. It's not something that we'll ever not do. So
right.
That's what we normally we talk about recruiting to a certain degree, and then definitely the mental side of the game, just as far as composure.
Yeah.
What they tell their players. Some of the coaches that I have a better relationship with, we can be a little bit more candid, and I can say, hey, Larry, Coach Penley, like what is the number one thing that parents and these junior golfers come in here with the misconceptions of, and he'll tell me, point by point by point. So those are, I try to stay away from the current events because there's other sites for that.
That's awesome. That's so great. You got a real nice niche here. So now then, what do you have anything that, do you have a list of junior golfers that are aspiring to be?
No. So what, like the part of it where I've just been, I told my wife I was only going to do it if I was having fun, like the podcast. It's just like, okay.
Yeah.
So somehow, beginning of May, I ended up with 100 episodes. And I mean, I have a list. I have a list of 100 something golf coaches. But I have not, crossed the bridge to actual junior golfers yet.
Okay. And, do you have any encouragement for people on the podcast to go somewhere and download something? I mean, part of the, what I do on More Cheese, Less Whiskers, I do the, we've got the ebook. So every episode, I always tell people, if you want to continue the conversation, you can go to morecheeselesswhiskers.com. You can download a copy of the More Cheese, Less Whiskers book. And if you'd like to be a guest on the show, you can click on the Be a Guest link. Now, so I'm always looking to draw people from just anonymous podcast listeners to people with a name, that I can communicate with. And so that, I think that might be a good, kind of immediate step for you, is to start that process of how can we start building a list, because the podcast, you're thinking the podcast itself is not a lead generator. If we look at the way that what that does is it creates the opportunity for you to communicate with your audience every week, and it also gives you a platform, a reason to email them. You can send out an email letting them know the new episode is up, and along with it, that creates an environment where you can include your offers, the things that you're going to kind of be able to work with people on, Because that's the thing is most of the time you got to think about how, when I say how, what's the monetization strategy? People always ask me that. How do you monetize a podcast? Well, it's not so much about monetizing the podcast. It's about creating an environment that lets you then, introduce people to all the things that you do for money, all the ways you can help them, So, do you have any service or products or coaching or anything that you offer on the back of this?
No, and that's what I wanted to do for this summer because literally there's probably 20 episodes, at least in the high teens of episodes, where I have coaches from every single level talking about the recruiting process. And one of the things I've thought about, and obviously it just comes down to, acting on it, is, hey, just make, dare I say, like a little consumer report guide, 10 things, like what you should be thinking about before you, go on any recruiting trip or, compare any college. But I've also thought about, and I know it might be tricky, but thought about like creating a scorecard as well. Because a couple of the coaches that I'm really, really close with have told me, like, David, like, if I can get these kids to stop focusing, well, not the kids, the parents, if I can get their parents to stop focusing on how much money they're going to get, they're going to have so much more fun. They're going to be so much better off in the long run. But, it's a give and take. So what I've thought of is possibly doing both, because right now there is no offer, per se, but the last 2/3 of the interviews I've done, excluding, the NCAA championships where I was talking to coaches as they prepare for that, excluding those episodes, have been about how to make a decision, college decision.
So where are the opportunities there? Do coaches subscribe to or pay for recruiting services? Is there what are the and do parents pay for placement services? You mentioned that early on. What would be the economics of that, of how what's available right now, or where the opportunity is in the market?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's and I haven't gone as far with some of the more high profile service providers, if you will, but there's at least 4 or 5 well-known, I'm just going to say, junior golf experts, gurus that have service. Well, they're either former coaches or former players that have services where, Dan, you could pay thousands of dollars to get to the quote unquote right school. Then you have a site, I think it's called Junior Golf Scoreboard, where you essentially, it's about how much you play as a junior and who you play against, for your ranking. So that site essentially works as a data funnel, but it also helps you to get placed because coaches subscribe to that. They subscribe to all the stats from that site. And then there's a site called GolfStat, where they have majority of junior and or just amateur tournaments, men's and women's, and they have a service as well. So I would say you have services ranging from $100 a month to literally, I don't know how the high-end guys do it. I don't know if it's a package 1-year deal or if it, depending on when you sign with them, but we're talking about thousands of dollars to get placed. So I don't know if that timeline is, say, your junior through senior year in high school. If I get you placed at school X, the amount is, Y, or it's one of those things where, bottom line, no matter if I get you placed or not, it costs $3,000.
Okay. And is that something that you'd like to do, or is that something that you would aspire to, or you have any experience in, or what will be your dream come true outcome here?
My dream come true. It's a good question. In the beginning, I wasn't too keen on the recruiting side of it because I was fortunate enough to play college football, play at Division I level, played a couple of years of pro ball. So like I get that side of it to a certain degree, but it just wasn't in the beginning until I started having the deeper conversations with coaches. I was like, I don't really want to get into that. But literally one of the last conversations I had with the coach, he was like, all these other sports have recruiting platforms. College football has one, college basketball has one. I'm not too sure about baseball, but it was like, why don't we have one? For goodness sakes, we have to recruit like eighth graders. Why doesn't somebody create that? So maybe it's opportunistic. Maybe it's just a recency bias. I'm all for it because I don't have my skin in the game is that I want to help the recruits or the junior golfers and their parents make the best decision. But I also, I mean, these coaches are my friends, you know, I mean, for lack of a better way of saying it. So like, I want to make it to where there is dare I say, a happy, benevolent ecosystem. And I think I'm the only one who has that access because I'm not on a platform of say ESPN or whoever, you know, Golf Week or whatever. So I can start it off with no strings attached, if you will.
Well, what's the name of your podcast?
It is called The Caddy because one of the cool things I figured out about college golf, the coaches are their players' caddies, and I thought that was interesting.
Okay, there you go. All right, and so when I think about this, like I'm immediately creating parallels to the hockey situation where we have had some experience. That I think that there might be an opportunity for you to put together a scholarship directory, meaning just the information, right? Like this is where you're kind of like, it's the more cheese, less whiskers approach to gathering your audience. Your ideal audience is somebody who is a junior golfer or parents of a junior golfer who are aspiring to get a college scholarship. And for them to kind of download a college golf scholarship directory, the 2017 college golf scholarship directory, would be a win for them.
That's
you know,
huge.
They might think, wow, we've hit the gold mine here, right? Like that is almost like they'll feel like they're one step closer. But what it also does then is it immediately creates the next question of, well, what do I do now? Because having the information is not enough. You're not giving them anything more than what they could find on their own with just a little research, right? Like you're giving them the colleges that have golf programs, right?
Correct.
So to be able to compile that into a directory would be a valuable thing. Is there such a directory right now, or is this the opportunity that you could create one?
I know that Ping has one, but I need to actually check up on that. There's cost,
right?
I believe about $100, and it's more of a. It's almost like a catalog. It's been done, which to me means that I can do it on a different level. So, yes, there is that available for sure.
And that's kind of an interesting opportunity for you, you know, like to create something like that where you're getting then the ideal audience, because somebody who's going to download a directory like that is, identifying themselves as somebody who is a junior golfer that is aspiring to get a scholarship. Now that audience, that becomes a very valuable thing. You know who they are. Now they're not an invisible prospect, but they're a real prospect, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for something like that, one of the statements I've made on the podcast is that, you know, a lot of the conversations that I have with these coaches are, goodness, I don't even know what they're worth. They might be priceless to the right families, because They, keep them out of debt, to hundreds, in some cases, thousands and thousands of dollars in debt, and at the same time too, the worst for me, somebody who's played sports, the worst thing that can happen in the sports realm is for you to make a bad decision as far as where to go in your, dare I say, your amateur college career, and it burns you out, and you lose that love that you've had for the sport because of a bad decision. So for me, what I've always said is like, hey, like what we're talking about here, it's priceless. So because it's priceless, if you know somebody or a family or a junior golfer who needs to hear this, please send it to them, because I would never charge for that, because that's common knowledge. And I think that's the other side of the coin in this realm, if you will, is that, I mean, I kid you not, there's a lot of money in golf. Let's point out the white elephant in the room. But at the same time, the other guys or services in this realm, they ask for a pound of flesh, just to be in the conversation to make the correct decision. So to offer it for free makes it, I think, kind of blows the doors off of what has been a very lucrative endeavor. If you get one or two high profile guys a year, like I said, depending on how you tier things, it could be substantial. But I like what you're saying for sure.
And then that now would open up to the services that you could provide, or as a gateway into the services that other people provide. They may be willing to advertise, or as an affiliate, or pay you, on a performance basis for bringing them new clients. Making those introductions. That may be. Is there such a thing where in golf that the coaches would? Do they pay recruiting services, or do they outsource any of that, or they do?
Oh, yeah. Especially for golf. Well, let me be fair and say I'm not 100% sure, but I have a football background, and I know for a fact that, they, at a higher level, you pay for certain services just to be in the know, but you have the foot soldiers because you have the budget for the foot soldiers. In golf, there is no foot soldier. It's the coach, and if he's lucky enough to have an assistant coach, he has him as well. But after that, I want to say there's Golf Stat, and then there's Junior Golf Scoreboard. And I did not check the prices on this, but it's there.
I just think, if you start thinking, how my mind would start thinking about this is start to think about on one end of this, you've got the junior golfers. And then on the other end of this, you've got the golf coaches with their golf programs, right? And this gap in between, this path from somebody who's a rising junior, coming into their junior year, they're going to set things up in their senior year and then land at the right college, is what's the timeline of what are all the possible things that could happen there, And I mean, it's really interesting how if you could, go to almost to the level of at the pro level, there are, draft analysts or whatever, that are like analyzing and predicting, projections for what round this person's going to go in, or what, all of those kinds of things. It could be an interesting opportunity for creating a platform that is like a clearinghouse kind of, or a way that I was thinking about like the NFL combines, where if there were some way where you could gather junior golfers for some showcase or some event. Like I'm just thinking whenever I start thinking about things like this, I think about like what's the best possible outcome or the biggest possible thing that we could imagine. There's no nothing stopping you from imagining this at its highest level, right? Might as well, if you could think, you might as well think about what's the biggest that it could possibly be. And when you kind of get a sense of the scope of that market, you said there's 1,200 programs, and they're recruiting every year. I mean, there's thousands of golfers that are involved in this, right? That are vying for these positions, and so you look at that they may, in any given recruiting year, they may recruit 3 or 4 new golfers every each program.
Oh yeah, it's and that's probably been one of my major I couldn't mentally think about, because I think the only way to think about this is the biggest level possible, because every local paper or regional golf tournament is going to have, dare I say, a list of the top juniors in that area, which, again, I mean, it's openly available for free or for, being a subscriber or what have you. Yeah. But for me, the biggest, and I say this, I hope I've proved it on the podcast, but to me, the biggest win is to give these coaches, and definitely the junior golfers and their parents, the biggest platform to succeed on, because that is what it's about. If you're not playing and you're not content, it doesn't, like, as an athlete, you're borderline worthless. I hate to be candid about it. So what's the best thing? What is the best thing that could happen if you're a junior golfer? Okay, obviously you're playing well. But then obviously, what if there was and I know that they have certain showcase events, and I don't have to do research just as far as NCAA would have it. But what if you knew that 3 coaches from 3 of your preferred schools that were, quote unquote, in your budget, had the coaching style that you wanted, and were in your, dare I say, region, if you will. Some guys don't want to play in the East. Because of the weather, some guys don't want to play or would rather play West Coast or Florida or South Carolina and below. So what if there was an event what if there was an event where 3 of those boxes could be checked? I think that would be insane. That would be insane for a college or for a junior golfer. Absolutely. And I think if you think about it, that, if you, I look at this and I think about what's the proven models for this, right? So development stuff. So you've got the ranking. If you go down here would be the PGA Tour. Then you'd have is it the web.com tour now? Whatever right below the PGA Tour. It used to be the Nike Tour. Then you've got the Division I college. And then, is there any equivalent, like on of a Nike Tour or a something like that would be an aspiring college tour, like a junior tour, aside from the USGA events? That's a good question. I know that they have I'm gonna butcher the name of this, but I know they have mini series,
mini tours. Yeah,
mini tours. Yes, I don't know where my mind is going, but they have different mini tours they're mostly a regional thing, like say Texas and Florida. But also, I think it's an initiative that the PGA Tour is trying to push. There is, let's see, there's the Mackenzie Tour, which is Canadian. A Canada-based tour. There's a Latin American tour. I wonder.
All for junior golfers?
No, those are guys that usually have just graduated who or let me just say have, declared professionally.
I'm talking about who are, that their PGA Tour, their stop is they're looking and vying for a college scholarship. I'm saying, is there a showcase kind of tour like that?
I see what you're saying.
Or
let me
event
I can pull that up real fast. I know that Junior Golf Scoreboard has something of that to that effect.
Right. And it could be another, even another way of getting a title sponsor for something like that. Because you look at all of the things that are going to be involved in that 2-year window from somebody they're entering their junior year and declaring, being recruited and signing with a college. That's kind of your window of opportunity there, right? Mm-hmm. And you think about all the things, because you've got, your top line thing is that you're sharing with coaches, that you're kind of like giving people an inside view of what college golf is actually like. Is there any other podcast similar to what you're doing, or are you the only one really focused on college golf like that?
There's 2 that have college on Sirius XM that have mm-hmm. college coaches. I want to say Conrad Ray has one from Stanford, or a former Stanford guy, and then Florida State's coach has one. But those podcasts, they're good.
Those are one coach. Yeah, they're not highlighting other coaches, right?
Exactly. And then the other curveball in those 2 is that the content is good, but it is not specific. So you're going to talk about the highest levels of college golf, which, mind you, is going to not talk about Division 2, 3, and below, and then it's going to talk all the way down to junior golf. So the top rated golfer in just Ocala, Florida, they're going to talk about, but they also have to fit in all junior golf news within that hour. So it becomes a situation where you really only have 2 or 3 topics to talk about. And if we're honest, there's only like maybe 10 things you talk about all year because mm-hmm. there's just too much there. There's a whole lot going
on. So when I think about those other things, where you need to kind of focus on is building the audience for the podcast, which is not about just trying harder on the podcast or doing more on the podcast. That's not really that's in itself doesn't grow that podcast list. Is to get out in front of people and get that content out there, in terms of doing some lead generation. I talk about a podcast as a Profit Activator 3 activity, right? Which is to educate and motivate. That's the best use of a podcast. And Profit Activator 2, about getting people to raise their hand, generating leads. You can do that outside of the podcast. It's not going to generate leads on its own. It's more of a lead conversion tool than a lead generation tool. So you need to have something like this college scholarship directory would be a great step. Because if you're advertising that to junior golfers or to anybody, and you're getting people to raise their hand, now you're building this list. You're building this email list of people that you can let them know whenever the new podcast comes out. But you can also then think about providing access to all of the things that they're going to consume between entering their junior year and signing with or arriving at the best college for them, and that could be equipment, it could be consulting or coaching or guidance on getting the scholarship, it could be development, it could be think about how many people would be interested in reaching that audience as well, right? You've got, when you have an audience like that, now you've got the opportunity to have to introduce sponsors,
Yeah, that's a big opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Just writing this down. Yeah. So that's well, I mean, if I'm honest, what really intrigues me the most is the market maker aspect of it, because I've heard you say it plenty other times, especially in real estate. But I've never, for whatever reason, whether it's my mental block or whatever, I've never thought of it in my situation, because that's where, that'd be downhill. Once you got it going, it'd be pretty much a machine or a system that would be self-running. What, I'm trying to think. What can you tell me more about the college, the hockey scholarship service that you guys work with?
Right. So what they do is, branding and social media and packaging for hockey prospects, and they, when you're introducing something like that, parents might look at that as a luxury or something that might be not critical, not necessary. They don't understand why you would do that. It might seem like just, an expense kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. But what they really want is they either want to get into the NHL or they want to get a college scholarship. So when you look at it, let's go with what the cheese is, right? What's the cheese? The thing that they really want. And the junior golfers, what they really want is the scholarship. That's the end goal of all of it, right? And so when you, rather than trying to sell advice or convince people that they need your help to do it, then start with giving them what they think they want. And so most people would think if they saw an ad for a college golf scholarship directory, that they would think that is the gold mine. There it is, right there in those pages is my opportunity, right? So they would immediately respond for something like that. They ask for it. Now, as soon as they ask for it, they've identified themselves to you as somebody who has college golf scholarship aspirations. There. So now you've turned an invisible listener to your podcast, or an invisible, person who's just out there. You don't know who's aspiring for it because there's no list of them. And you can build that list now, right? So you've got that opportunity to, by just putting together a directory, have the opportunity to get people to raise their hand. Now, as soon as they raise their hand, how it works in the hockey world is that there's an immediate next question, which is, now what? Because they realize that just having the directory, that's not a scholarship. And so they've got this access, but now it immediately brings up questions that they wouldn't know or think to ask before having this directory in their possession, right? Now they're thinking things like, well, what do I say? How do I contact these coaches? How do I make my kids stand out over all the other kids that are vying for these scholarships? Now there's a need for advice and counsel and packaging and services and all those things. So when you look at it, is like packaging up. If you've got the coaches on the far end here at the promised land telling you on your podcast the total package that they look for when they're recruiting golfers, and their scoring average is just one of those things, that they're looking for academics, they're looking for leadership, they're looking for responsibility, all the things that go into it, right? It's not just the best golfer that they're looking for. So, when you think about that, that sets up this advisory ecosystem where you can help them with all of those things, potentially, that they're going to need SAT prep. They're going to need, if it comes down to two golfers with the same scoring average, the one with a higher academic outcome is going to be probably a better choice for them, right?
Yeah.
That whole package, it's really about, getting the insight to what these coaches are looking for and coaches' best advice to people. I mean, that's really how you can position this. If you think about it, that the audience is junior golfers and parents of junior golfers with college aspirations. That shapes the narrative of your podcast, right? That shapes the way that everything about it is, that the audience is this. It's not just the general public. It's not other coaches. It's although it's going to be interesting to other coaches, the primary audience, who you're going to be a hero to, is junior golfers on their way to college scholarships.
Yeah, I think that was the one thing that I just couldn't mentally work through is, when you talk to, if I were to open my contacts in my phone book on my phone, there's like 60 something coaches there. So that's text, that's phone calls, that's voicemail, that's emails. So that's, dare I say, the low hanging fruit or the comfort zone. But the audience is what I've always just tripped over, is like, okay, so do you make it more focused on coaching? Because that's,
No. And I think that coaches, they see, for them, it's going to be valuable to them that you're talking to their audience too. They need these players, and they want to make sure that they get the best players, and they want to put themselves in as good a light as possible by seeming to be really helpful and forthcoming and willing to share,
Yeah, it's funny how talking to you, all this makes 100% sense. Oh, it's awesome.
So with that in mind, that's, I think, the thing. The other thing that you have too right now is you've got a gold mine of, assets here, of all of the things that these coaches have said over those 100 episodes that would be useful and helpful for an aspiring college golfer. Like if you go through, do you get your episodes transcribed?
I do not. Or I have not, I should say.
Right. So when you look at it, that asset that you have is there's so much content that you could create from that, because you need to get out of this podcast world and out into Facebook and the message boards and the golf sites and the places where these people, where they're looking, right? So that they can discover your podcast. You need to get that out there. So I look at, so the way, you look at what a gold mine that can be kind of thing. So I've just wrapped up a year of doing this More Cheese, Less Whiskers podcast. Joe Polish and I've done over 300 episodes of I Love Marketing. And we have every one of those episodes transcribed. What I've been doing with More Cheese, Less Whiskers here is every episode is transcribed, and then I have a writer who takes the transcripts and finds out of each episode 300 to 500 word nuggets that I send as emails every week. So I email every subscriber 3 times a week with really valuable content, just all, 100% stuff that's been derived from what I've said on podcasts. So it becomes your content creation, so your really job is to talk to as many college coaches as you can, get their best insights, get their approach to things, you're like an advocate with access for all of these junior golfers,
Yeah, I feel like my mind it's this is great because I make it a point to listen to I think it's the first 8 episodes on I Love Marketing every 6 months or so, because it's just
right.
It's very basic isn't the right word, but it's very fundamental in a sense that it just,
right.
I always ask myself, okay, am I doing this or am I doing what they said? But even as somebody who, since you launched this podcast, I have been all about, because it's just, there's nothing better than hearing how somebody else does something in their business,
right.
and then they talk with you, and then they find, let's just say, a better path. And then I think about, okay, how can I apply that in what I'm doing? And I've seen, like I said, I'm on vacation now. So I have 20 emails, at least 20 emails, personal emails that I need to read. And I've gotten 5 from you from this podcast over the past 2.5 weeks or so. And the funny thing about it is that all those emails I've flagged them all because they're all awesome. And I tell myself, well, it's really just an overflow of, the episodes that you have. And it just makes it to where it's just like, okay, let me just flag that. And then when I have a thought, I'll go back to my inbox or my Gmail every, all mail, and I'll just type in the keywords and it'll come up. And I'm just thinking, to bring it back full circle. So what if, because we're talking about something that isn't, whether it's golf or college, it's something that you don't really it's not going to happen in 6 months, even though like you said multiple times, the inquiry handling services, am I getting that mixed up?
Right.
There's going to be your 10-15% that are going to need help fast, and they'll pay for it and they'll be there. But it's a longer gestation process, especially with choosing a college, let alone a college golf team to play for. And one of the guy who created one of the sites I told you about, I was like, so what's the number one mistake that these junior golfers make along with their parents? He was like, David, they don't start the process soon enough. I was like, okay, so when would you advise to start the process? He was like freshman year of high school. So you're talking about 4 years, of potentially, if you're really good, it might be significantly less than that. But you're talking about 4 years before you make a decision,
Right.
So how are you going to keep in contact with that person, with that prospect for 4 years?
I would think big for you. I think that there's, if you think about this, that planting those seeds, that crop, if you're going to say it, of freshman year, those people are going to graduate and cross the finish line 4 years from now, And planting those seeds, that long-term thinking is what's going to lead to, because I always think the first thing about selecting a single target market is plan to dominate, right? So if you're thinking about this, that's why I think about and talk about it as a big idea, is think about it. What would you do if this was the biggest opportunity? How could you make this the biggest opportunity? I have a good friend, Richard Rossi, who had the ultimate foresight to realize that there was such a thing as the future farmers of America, but there was no future physicians of America.
Oh, wow.
And so he started the National Congress of Future Physicians and Medical Scientists. And he does huge events for aspiring physicians and medical scientists every year, and has at the highest level, has Nobel Prize winners come and speak at these events, has thousands of people, 10,000 people or more at these events. But all started with that thinking of, let's gather all the people who are going to be future physicians, and there's nobody stopping you. That's really the exciting thing.
Yeah, because that's an awesome thought.
And there's so many people. There's so many stakeholders in that journey from freshman year to freshman year. That's really. But you think about it, working backwards, junior year to freshman in college is the sweet spot right now, right? That's the where all the action is. But digging your well before you're thirsty, how can you get into access for those because the ones who are going Division I, they're already serious golfers as a freshman, right? So nobody's picking up golf junior year thinking they're going to play at Florida or Clemson or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So these are serious golfers.
Yeah,
all right.
And that's
I have to go at the top of the hour here, so I can't go over our hour today. But let's kind of have you kind of wrap up what your insight was, and where we could pick an action step for you.
Yeah, well, before I do that, I would hate to forget to say thank you, Dean. This has been awesome. It's amazing how I've had all these thoughts, but they've never been in one direction or at the same time.
Right.
So this conversation has been it's priceless in my opinion.
Wait till you listen back to it too.
That's what I'm afraid of. Like, oh man, this was about 10 times just to parse apart different parts of it. But I would say that what I've gotten from it is that, the audience, how can I be a hero to a certain segment of the audience? Because I think too often before I was just thinking about, being in the conversation, and being in the conversation is completely different from being the leader, being the hero. Because when you're the hero, you can say, hey, have you thought about this? Or here's this, read that, And, for me, that's the most simplest way of saying it. Is like, okay, I need to start being a hero. I need to make an offer. I need to come up with ways to get, whether it's a scorecard or the directory or all those things. I need to come up with ways to get. Yeah, I need to come up with ways to get these parents and these junior golfers to raise their hands and to get onto an email list to where I can, because it's going to be about conversation. I can't tell you how many times where I talk with a coach and they're like, I can't believe, such and such ACC, Big 10, Big 12, Ivy League school passed on this kid. And I was like, oh, really? Why'd they choose you? We talked to them first. and I'm just like, wow, 2017. And sometimes, the first immutable law from Al Reese and Jack Crow, it's about talking to them first. So that's my number one thing now is to, redirect, just, obviously continue to do the podcast, but there needs to be a back end with an offer to get these junior golfers into the prospect or into my prospect list, because that allows me to be, to me, the only reason why I would play this game, if you will, is to be a market maker. I don't really, everything else is kind of small. I don't say that, selfishly. I just say it in terms of like, the only way to do it right is to do it as big as possible for everybody involved.
That's it. Exactly. Love it. Well, that was exciting. I think you got a lot of great opportunity, and I think you got a nice context for it now, even just in your recounting of the conversation to me. Makes me feel like you got the context of it, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah, it's funny. You listen to podcasts, you learn about direct response marketing, but sometimes there's this mental block in applying it to what you're doing. But then when somebody helps you apply it to what you're doing, you're like, oh, wow, it's right there. It's right there.
You see? Awesome. All right, David, it's been fun. I've really enjoyed it, and keep me posted. I want to hear how you're doing.
I will. The summer's pretty much over, but that means that there's work to be done. There's an orchard to plant, right? So that's what I'll be doing.
Amen. Sure. Exactly. Awesome. Thanks, David.
All right, Dean. I appreciate it.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
All right. Bye.
And there we have it. Another great episode. I hope that you, if you're considering a podcast or you have a podcast, that you really kind of think that through as more of a vehicle to carry communication. And that around that, if you'll notice the way that I use this More Cheese, Less Whiskers podcast as a model for you, that the most important thing is that the content of the podcast is really adding value, that your, everything about this podcast is 100% geared to helping entrepreneurs make more money. And so every episode is specifically focused on how can we turn this opportunity into more money for the entrepreneur, and that your podcast, whatever the purpose of it is crystal clear, and that we're not using the podcast as a way to generate business on its own, but all the things that you get to do around it. For instance, when we do this podcast, I get the opportunity to send you an email that announces that this podcast is happening, and that I get to, along with that email, let you know that I'm doing a mastermind group, or that I'm starting an email mastery case study program, or that we can help you write a 90-minute book, or that you can get all the tools that you need to set up landing pages and autoresponders and do all of your marketing at gogoclients.com. I get those chances to presence those things, to introduce you to those things that could be helpful tools for you, but not within the podcast. The podcast has its purpose of being a educational and motivational piece that we're highlighting all the ways that you can apply the 8 profit activators to your business. So I hope you got a lot out of that. And let me know if you have a podcast. Send me your podcast at dean@deanjackson.com. Just send me an email. Tell me about your podcast. I'd love to see what kinds of podcasts our listeners have going on. I want to see what you're doing. Okay, as always, if you'd like to continue the conversation, you can go to morecheeselesswhiskers.com. You can download a copy of the More Cheese, Less Whiskers book. You could click on the Be a Guest link and be a guest on the show, and we could hatch some evil schemes for your business. And if you want to just see where the opportunity is in your business as far as applying the 8 Profit Activators, you can go to profitactivatorscore.com and take the Profit Activator scorecard. It'll show you exactly where all the opportunity is in your business, the low-hanging fruit. So that's it for this week. I'll talk to you next time.